This is Leah Cunningham, and this is me talking about my self-evaluation. The project that we done was 30 dancers, and we had done a 30-minute dance piece. With having 30 dancers within the project, rehearsals sometimes can be quite hard and tricky as the space. There wasn't always enough room for us as well. When it came to choreographing and learning new material. It then became a little bit more tricky as well when it came to performing, due to having to be a lot more aware of our spatial awareness and who was around us and how far you could spread out on stage. For the project, our theme was fighting your inner battles, so something that you had within yourself and you were trying to fight that inner problem, and it was shown through all the stages that you could be going through. So you could be really sad with it, you could be really angry, you could be not coping very well and losing to your battle, you could be coming over your battle. The rehearsal process was all more than pretty much good and well. I feel like together we all worked really well as a team. If the dancers were there and our choreographer weren't there, I feel like we worked quite well together and making sure we all knew what we were doing and practicing it, and just made sure that we knew our material. And then also when the choreographer was in the room, I feel we all worked to our best abilities and all put in our hard work together. Within the conditions of it being 30 dancers, as I've said, it sometimes could have been a bit harder due to there being a lot more of us and maybe not being as much room for us to do the movement as big as we wanted to or as full out. But we mainly managed to work on that together with each other. And we also, sometimes when we had been working for numerous amount of hours in one studio, the floor could become quite slippy, and that sometimes could become a hazard towards us as dancers, which we found quite hard as well. So we just need to watch out for things like that. But apart from that, the conditions when it came to the rehearsal process were all pretty much very well. That's quite good. Now, as the research came onto it, Gaz, who took charge of our project and choreographed it, he told us that we really had to kind of look into our emotions and how we could use our emotions to show that through a movement. A lot of the emotions we got told to look at was like anger, sadness, and basically pretty much like more looking at the negative kind of impact that it has on ourselves, showing us how to fight that battle and the struggles that it can cause to yourself. He kind of told us that we were starting off with this inner battle inside us that only we could kind of deal with and like try and fight against, and we were trying to fight there to get past this battle and overcome this battle within us. We kind of started off with, it was more kind of looked at anger. We were kind of stuck on the emotions of anger and using anger to fight against this inner battle that we had. And then as the process rehearsal kind of evolved on, we kind of went from moving from like anger to anxiety to like sadness. And then we were dipping into more of the pockets of the things that weren't just anger or just sadness. So it's kind of like more like depression, like anxiety, a little bit more in depth of how them inner problems can make you feel. We were also told to research some teams that were more hip-hop theatre based, as our piece was more hip-hop theatre based as well. So one of the things I looked at were diversity, as they're a really, really big hip-hop theatre group who story tell through their movement and dance of hip-hop. And one of their big ones was the Black Lives Matter. That was one of the biggest ones that they have ever done, and it struck such a wide audience of all ages and race, sexuality and everything, that kind of told a story to everyone from that movement. It was just literally that powerful. And I feel like they managed to use their emotions and movement to tell the story so well that everyone understood what they was talking about when it came to the Black Lives Matters. Their storyline was so clear A lot of the movement they used was heavy and harsh and fast. So when it came to practice-led research in the studio, from me looking at diversity when it came to making up tasks or movement ourselves, I used a lot of heavy movement, hard and fast, as I was trying to think back to when I'd watched the diversity and how they used their movement when it came to hip hop theatre. Role as a collaborator that I had during this project would have definitely been when we done our duet tasks and our solo tasks. Our first duet task we got given was, we got given 4 movements and we had to basically join them 4 movements into a duet while also adding other movements in, but we had to stay connected and have a knock-on effect. I found this really interesting as I got to be able to see my partner Jodie and how she moved and how she seen things differently and how she would put emotions into movement as well. As I had never worked with Jodie before, this was very interesting way to see how she explored and done her movements within this. Another thing we done was a solo task where we had to basically use the movements that we had already kind of been given within the piece and the choreography movement that guys had given us, and stick to a structural pattern on the floor where our feet would move to. But within this we had to show more of like anger, so most of our movements were more sharp and they kind of more stuck and more sturdy. Now again, when it came to creating this, I would think back to when I had seen diversity and what they had made up and kind of go from the practice-led research there to try and show more emotion through my movement to be able to tell the story more. When it came to exploring movement in each session, to start with, I kind of stuck to the same movement, which was the hard, the fast, the heavy movement, the grittiness of it all. But as the sessions came more and more on, I then realised that it weren't just anger that we were also looking at, it was more anxiety, sadness and depression. They were also a really big key factor of how people deal with having to get over that inner struggle within themselves. So some of my movements then became a bit more airy and light to show the delicacy of the human emotions and how anxiety sometimes can be really hard and it is sad. So my movements went from being really gritty and hard and heavy at the start to then going through a more soft and calm environment. It was much slower as well, which showed a really big change of how my movement was from the start towards the end of the creative process. I feel like how to be more creative and exploring the movement that I was using would definitely be not to spend so much time on one style of movement at the very start, and to kind of chop and change in between throughout, as I had for the first couple of lessons I'd kind of stuck to one type of movement, which was the heavy and the hard, and then changed into the more delicate and calm, slow pace ones. But I feel like that I should have maybe changed sooner and then chop and changed in between, as this maybe would have been able to help bounce off each other and give me more creative ideas. I feel like one of the most interesting tasks, which I've kind of already spoke about, was definitely the duet one, which was seeing how my partner worked and how their movement bounced off my movement, and then our ideas could be joined or give each other more ideas. Another one definitely was the solo task, which I found very interesting because you were able to then stand and watch your peers and how they moved and what movements they chose and how they use movements to show their emotion and speak through the way that they would like to show their feelings and how they'd fight their inner battles. It just basically shows like how much of a wide range that everyone has, and then being able to watch each other as well, you can give each other ideas and it bounces off each other, and then you're not only with end up with your ideas and they end up with their ideas, but as a class you share so much and you just learn a lot from it. So I feel like it was very interesting because you learn a lot from each other in the process, and I feel like it helps build you as a dancer and build your movement and your plate of knowledge as well. I feel like what will I do differently next time? I feel like next time I definitely would like to research just more than one thing. So as I researched into diversity for the hip hop theatre kind of thing, I feel like I would have liked to have researched a little bit more into different people, and got maybe a bit of a more wide ranging view on hip hop theatre and not just kind of stuck to the one dance group and what they had done and how their outlook on it all was. I feel like with looking at more than just one, that it would have gave me more intel on how hip hop theatre can come across and be portrayed. As I started this task, I didn't have no clue about hip hop theatre. I wasn't really sure what it was. I hadn't really seen it before except from on diversity. So I feel like it would have been a lot more helpful and useful if I had looked at more than just that dance company within the hip hop theatre. The role as a performer, the professional industry standards are always set quite high when it comes to doing things like this, because your choreographer always needs to be able to trust in you and make sure you're always going to be there for their performances and you're going to pick up their material and make sure that you're definitely going to give out your best when it comes to being on stage and put your all in when it also comes into rehearsal process. I'd say that when it comes to professional industry standards, that you always need to be on your A game and you're always need to be there in the room 100% ready to give anything a go. Basically just make that like your number one priority, is because, as I said, your choreographer really needs to have 100% trust in you, because then when they have 100% trust in you when it comes to booking another job or doing another performance, then they know that you're trustworthy, so they are more than likely to ask you to do another performance with them again. With rehearsal etiquette, it's always mainly about being there 100% in the room, and always giving your all to obviously have that trust from your peers and your choreographer. You always need to be there giving 100% energy, 100% focus, just basically 100% absolutely everything you can. You need to always be in that room. Unfortunately, I did miss one of my rehearsals, which had a little bit of negative impact on me, as I was then a little bit stressed for my performance. But I did, however, have another rehearsal before going on stage. It was just a little bit of a cleaning and going over rehearsal that it was. It wasn't a major one, but it did have an impact on me and probably has an impact on my class as well. But I made sure that I was caught back up and I knew absolutely everything, and I made sure to do it all in my own time, as I weren't taking time away from anyone else's. It was only my fault and problem that I weren't in that rehearsal. But that is a main factor for rehearsal etiquette, make sure you're at every single rehearsal you can be in. Some of the goals I had set for going in towards this project was definitely getting picked for select things within the piece. As Gaz had spoke about, there was some sections that he only wanted a couple people in, or like a small number of group in. As the rehearsal process went on, I hadn't been picked for anything, which just determined me more to try harder and drive for that. And I feel like with my drive and positive outlook, I managed to achieve one of my goals, as I got picked for one of the select sections that started the full piece off. I feel like I only got there with making sure that I was determined and working even harder and showing me as a dancer and showing that I really wanted to achieve one of that goals, to get selected for one of the things. The compliments and feedback that I got from some of my peers, the compliments I got was after we had done the dress rehearsal. A few compliments were that they didn't know that I could move like that, and they feel that I'm very strong within that style. And I feel like with giving such a compliment, that it makes me feel better as a dancer and feels like the hard work that paid off, because I didn't know anything about hip hop theatre. I had never danced it before or within the styles that we had used within our piece. I was determined, and it made me work so much harder. So then getting compliments and feedback like that does make you feel like the hard work has paid off, and it did make me feel good. The feedback I also got from Gaz was that he was also shocked with how well I managed to do within that style, is because he had never seen me dance in that style before, or knew that I could dance so well in the style, which also just makes the determination and all the hard work feel like it really does pay off. When it came to the musicality as well, it was like only sound the full way through, which I had never done a piece to before, so it felt like it was also a challenge for me when it came to doing things like that. But I feel like it's definitely worked on my musicality and has definitely built up my musicality from doing that piece. Again, as I said, the style was nothing that I had really done before, but I feel like it's definitely something that I can now put under my dance belt and keep working on and get better, as I really have enjoyed dancing that style. The emotion that had to be put into this piece was second to none. It was our main factor and our main base for it all. It really was, and I have danced with emotion before, but never so much emotion towards that level, and I just feel like it's definitely built on my movement that I now have, and it's now built on how much I can express through movement and dance. We had to keep a character the whole way throughout this, which is something that I wasn't never really always found easy, but when it came to performing, it just came on so quickly and just was there, and I never managed to lose it at all. And I feel like when I first started, at the very start of the rehearsal process, I found it so hard to get into character and stay into character, but by working on it and being determined, I feel like it's just came on so much better, and I feel like I now can take that towards into my future when it comes to being in a character, and having to hold on to that character will be so much easier because of how much I worked on it during this project. But definitely staying in character was such a strong point for this piece, and you really had to stay in it. Overall, the strengths and weaknesses of the group, I feel like the strengths of the group were how well we worked as a group and how determined we all were, and we all really did work so hard. Like, even as I said at the very start of this, that even when Gaz wasn't in the room or no choreographer, we was all still going over as a group and making sure we knew what we were doing together, and we were all really friendly to each other, and if anyone needed help, we were always there to help each other. I feel like maybe sometimes the weakness of the group was when maybe like someone thought a movement was a certain thing, but then someone thought it was other. There was just maybe a bit of a disagreement, but we'd always managed to come to an agreement after that, so it wasn't really a bit of a problem. We all kind of managed to get down to an agreement of what it was, and I'd just say it was a little bit of a weakness. I'd say we just worked really well together. Overall, worked hard, made sure everyone needed the help that we did. I'd say the impact of the performance was really big, as a lot of people that had spoke to after watching it had said that they'd felt quite emotional and very impacted on the message that we had sent out, which the message was obviously like fighting your inner problem and how to get on with that and all the problems deep inside. But the impact, everyone said, it had sent out a big message, and it was very clear what we were trying to tell, and that it was just clear, and we worked all really hard together, and watching the piece gave it a lot of emotions, as people would say. But yeah, thank you, that is everything.